2009 Honda Accord. So oil changes. Now this vehicle is probably about 1,500 miles from the next oil change, which is pretty good. And I think by the time the trip is over, we will be ready for an oil change. We'll maybe be a couple of hundred miles over, if that, maybe not. And that's not too big of a thing because I keep on top of the maintenance and I'm religious with it. But anytime you go on a long trip, you want to get rid of the variable of what could be wrong with the vehicle, what could break down. Believe it or not, oil can cause a lot of issues on a vehicle, especially on these Hondas that are very particular about oils. These Hondas have VTEC solenoids and a lot of screens and everything, and if the oil is dirty or has or worn out, you'll actually get some check engine code, you'll actually get some performance issues. I actually had a Honda Civic that I used the wrong type of oil and the engine was pretty dirty, and I changed the VTEC solenoid a couple of times and I cleaned out the screen, and I changed the oil, I cleaned out the screen again, and what I kept on finding out was that the engine was neglected, and all the crap in the engine kept getting clogged in the VTEC screen. Dirty oil could, like I said, could cause emission issues, drivability issues. I mean, I've seen check engine lights go away just by changing your oil. And when I get a vehicle, the first thing I always ask a person is, when was the last time you had your oil changed? Does it have enough oil? And by making sure it has enough oil and it's had recent oil changes, that always gets rid of that variable of whatever issue we're looking into. So oil change is very important, and it's one thing that gives you great peace of mind, especially when you're going on a long trip, that you know your oil is good. And it's good to get under your vehicle to make sure that you don't have any surprise leaks, which that's what we're going to try to do on this one. So typically, let me find a light over here. See if we crawl in. I know the lighting is not going to be the best, but we'll make it work. You want to have your oil catch pan, which I have over here. I like this one. I have a container that I use over here that I put all the excess oil in. I don't like those other ones that are sealed on the top. Yeah, they're great, but if you have bad flow or if there's a blockage and a little bleed valve in it, it's going to overflow. It's a mess. This is less of a mess, and it's pretty big, so I like these things. They were good. I think I got this at the Wally World for like $10, so I don't know. All right, let's crawl underneath. Ugh. And let's take a look at our lovely Honda. So now, let's see if we get the camera right where it needs to be. Maybe. Nothing more fun than, I think we got it right over here. Okay, so before we actually get to the actual oil change aspect of this, take a look at the vehicle underneath. What you're looking for is drips. Now, seepage is not the end of the world. I'll live with seepage sometimes, but what you're looking for is different fluids. Check around the radiator over here, little cowls or little guards over here. This is actually the petcock for the radiator. Make sure nothing's leaking. I don't see no drops, drips, or anything like that. This is the transmission area. I don't see anything over here. Okay. Now, most new cars have these covers, which I hate, and they have their purposes, but they make it annoying where you really can't see what's going on in your vehicle. And yes, I'm sure they protect your driveway from excess drips if you have a problem with your vehicle, but then again, oil stains on my driveway lets me know there's a problem with my vehicle. All right, so right under here, I'm just taking a look. Like I said, we're looking for seeps. Got a little seepage going on right over here on the oil pan, but nothing to write home about. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, the seepage might have been my fault. There we go. Maybe, I don't know. The filter looks like it's got a little seepage going on from that filter, so maybe that filter is actually the issue. So, but nothing to write home on. What I'm talking about is like excessive drips, constant drips, stuff like that. But stuff like this really ain't gonna, worry you or get you broke down. I check my oils every rest area, so I'm not too worried about it. But everything looks pretty good. Nothing over here. I mean, just look for the types of fluids, brake fluid, transmission fluid, any type of fluid. So, all right. So we got a drain bolt over here. See if I get the light over here. Got a drain bolt over here. I think it's like maybe a 14 or 15. I don't know. I've done this so many times I just forget that, and I have like too many vehicles that I keep track of the oil change. And you got your oil filter over here. So I drained the oil plug, loosen it out, drain it out, and I leave it draining for a while. When I do an oil change, I want it to drain until there's no stream. Like you go to these Rapid Lubes and these Jiffy Lubes or whatever, the minute you drain it, the minute they drain it and it has a small trickle, they put it right back in, they top it off with oil. I want to get every little drop out. I mean, granted, they probably have 20 cars to do that day. I'm doing the brakes, so I'm going to just leave this draining for hours, and then I got to go to the while the world gets some oil, and yeah, we'll finish up the job. So let's get the camera. Maybe right there. All right. Shot number 2. Sweet. And this is going to be a 17 millimeter, so I was way off. All right, so let's see if we could get you back over here. This is hard to do, getting the camera angle. But let's move you over here. Let's get you in. And you can use a smaller one. I like longer wrenches because you get better leverage. These should not be astronomically tight like that was, but sometimes I go a little gorilla crazy on it. So let's drop this thing out over here. Now, when I'm loosening it, I push forward on it. And the reason why I push forward on it is so I could keep the drain bolt from falling in the oil. That's kind of counterproductive. So once I see that it's kind of seeping out a little bit, like I think it's right about there, I go ahead, let it drop. Bingo! Nice, good flow. And I think I just got some on my mic thing, my camera. So let's get this crap out of here. And I'll let it drip like that for a while. Let it drip, get it in there. Sorry for the shaky camera angles, and I'll let that go. So, all right, this oil is actually not too bad. Like I said, I think I got about 1,500 miles before we have to do this crap again, but I'm going on a road trip, why not? So let's get out of here. Ugh. All right, a little messy, but nothing too bad. Let's pop this right over here. Let's try to clean our hands the best we can. Okay, so then let's wipe this dongle down over here. Okay, another thing I do, open up your oil cap. That'll actually open up some pressure. Let it drain a little better. Just leave it right over here. Leave this up over here. And when I did that, you can actually see that it started flowing better. Well, you couldn't see, I could hear it. I don't know if it picked it up on the camera. So that's what I'll do. I'm gonna let this drain for a while, probably until I'm done with the brakes. Go to the O'Reilly's to do something else and get some oil at Walmart because it's cheaper. And we'll finish up this oil change. All right, so just came back from the parts store. Been gone for about 2 hours, and we're ready to finish up my oil change. So I went to O'Reilly's to get the rotors turned on this. I'm also doing a video on that. But I go to Walmart to get my oil. Number one, it's cheaper. And number two, I mean, it just all seems the same. I like to use this. I like the Valvoline. Why do I like the Valvoline? Let's see if I can get this up open. Because of the pour spout, less mess, and the price ain't too bad. I run synthetic on all my vehicles, and I change my oil every 5,000 miles. I don't go by the engine recommendation. Sometimes vehicles are 10,000 miles, 8,000 miles. I always go by 5,000 miles. I've done that for years and never had issues. I like synthetic oil because that's better protection. And every time I change the oil comes out clean. And sometimes at 5,000 miles, it's like, really? Am I really changing this oil? Even though it almost looks as good as when I put it in there. So that's typically what I do. Got the drain bolt over here ready, wiped it out. And they come with these washers. I never change them. I don't, unless they're leaking. Especially this one. Like, this one is fine. I've actually used this since I've had this car. I've had this car for about 4 years. And it's never leaked a drop. So that's a matter of preference. Whatever you decide to do, if you decide to change them, they're like $2, $3. I always forget to buy them. Like I said, if it's leaking, I'll change it. Typically, when I get a vehicle, especially a used vehicle, I'll change it and I will keep that washer for the life of it. Now, some of them, you have the plastic material on them, plastic washers. I do change plastic washers because, well, I just typically have not trusted them. I've had bad experiences. I've seen one with like a gasket-like material, and I've changed those. So, yeah. So we cleaned this up. We'll go ahead, go underneath, put this drain plug back in, and clean everything up. So let's get underneath the car. Back underneath the car, and as you can see, she is not dripping no more. So she's clean, just a little drop over there. Like I said, I let them drip for a while until it does this, where there's like no oil coming out or no drips whatsoever. I want the most oil out of it, and I want to get a fresh oil. I think I just got a drop right there. But we get the point on that one. Also, what I did off camera, I loosened the filter so it could kind of drain. On this car, it's easy because the filter's right next to the drain plug, so you can use the same catch to catch the oil. So, yeah, that works out pretty good. So, we're good. I loosened it with the tool that we have for getting out the filters. So, let's go ahead. And this is so hard to do underneath. A little hard.
Let's go ahead and get the filter off. All right. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. All right, and hold on to this, because if you let it go, it's going to splash and make a mess. And it's going to have some oil in it, because the filter sits in this position. See, as you can see, we got some more oil. Now I got oil all over my hand. So I usually just dump these things in the oil drain right over there. So now I got to find my rag or my shop towel so I can wipe my hand, get it clean. You know, these DIYers that do this and show this recording, you know what? They must have somebody else that does this or records for it, because this is kind of hard to do by yourself. But it's hard to get that angle and hold it and do everything one-handed. Not to mention, I can't see with my glasses because my vision is terrible. So everything up close looks pretty bad on the camera. But hopefully the camera angle does this thing justice. All right, so we got that done. Move this back over here. And we're going to put our drain plug back in here. Make sure the washer is on. That's pretty bad. I'm sorry if my light is flashing. I don't know what's going on with that thing. I've had it for a while. Harbor Freight, but it's been pretty good. Another thing, when you take off the filter, make sure the gasket don't stay behind. I've actually forgot that one time. Put it in and oil is pissing out all over the place. And yeah, that was not a good day. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Why are you doing this? I think the battery's dying. Oh, great. Okay, so we're going to try to speed this up a little bit. Let's get this camera down right over here. Oil filters, I guess it's just a preference. I mean, you use what you want to use. I use Fram because they're cheap at Walmart, and I usually get the Tough Guard, and I've never had any issues with these. I mean, I've been using them for years. On the O-ring of the oil filter, just go ahead and lube it up with some oil. I got plenty of oil on my hands, so we could go ahead and just get that up. That way when the gasket comes out, when you screw it in, the gasket sits nice, it doesn't tear, it doesn't rip, and everything. So let's go ahead and get right back up here. All right, we got enough oil on that. And let's go ahead and tighten this. Spin it in, righty-tighty. This just needs to be hand tight. Now, give it a good hand tight. This is kind of hard because my hand has oil on it. And once you have a hand tight, you're good to go. All right, so now the next thing we need to do is go ahead and get the wrench, which is right over here, our 17 mil. Is this the 17 side? Yep. And let's see if we got it the right side. Nope. Okay. Now, when tightening these plugs, remember, this is aluminum. These threads will strip, and if they strip, then guess what? You better figure out a good way to do a helicoil or get ready to drop the the oil pan. So I've been doing this for years. It's recommended to torque them. Put them in. I snug it pretty good because I've been doing it for a while and I'm just used to it. And once you're done, you go ahead and just wipe everything off, get all that little excess, anything that kind of struggle behind from the oil, and you're pretty much done. Now you can torque these, use a factory, get the factory spec and use a torque wrench on them. I don't do it because, like I said, I've been doing it for years. When I first started, I used to use a torque wrench for everything, but after a while, you get a good feel for it. There are certain bolts, nuts, screws that I do use a torque wrench from, but this, like I said, don't go crazy. Get it nice and snug, and you should be all right. So let's go up, get all this junk out of here. Let's go up to the top of the engine. Let's put some oil.
So now we're gonna put some oil in this thing. This car calls for 520, like I talked about just a second ago. I like synthetic. I've never had an issue with it. So synthetic works pretty good for me. Make sure you got a good enough funnel. If you have a small funnel, then it's gonna be a little slower pouring it in. And then you just gotta take your time. I just like to get it all in real quick. So this car usually takes about 5 quarts, if I'm not mistaken. So I usually just put about 4.5, and then I take it from there. So now when you put in the oil, something to keep in mind is that the oil filter is empty, and that thing has that paper, and it's gonna absorb some oil. And usually an oil filter can hold up to about 1/2 quart, depending on the size. Some oil filters hold a lot more. So yeah. What I do is after I put the oil in there, I fire the engine up, I check the oil, fire it up, let it run for a few minutes, turn it off, and then once I turn it off, I wait another few minutes, check the dipstick, and then usually I gotta add about up to 1/2 quart of oil on it. This one I'm just gonna go ahead and just put most of it in there, and then I'll check it and add it as need be. So I think I got about a little less than half a quart left on it, and now we are good. So as far as the dipstick, let this kind of drain out. Dipsticks, I usually just clean it. Why not? I mean, it's not much oil on it, but I still want clean oil. And keep the dipstick clean, and just go ahead and pop it in, and you're good to go. So like I said, next thing we do, we turn it on, we fire it, but I'm not gonna do that now because I'm still doing some other work on this vehicle. But I'll make sure you do that we could check to make sure that oil gets into the filter, which it will, hopefully, unless you have an engine issue, and then you could just add as you need. Another thing they need to do, go underneath, make sure you don't see no drips. I don't see no drips, so I know I'm good. And that's usually a reminder that either you forgot to tighten the drain plug. So 2009 Honda Accord oil change. I know it's been done many a times, but I just want to give my tips and tricks on how I do it and what I do next and how I handle my oil changes and just my advice on it. Very simple. Everybody has their own different ways and method, but this is what we do over here. So greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're not, and we'll see what we do next.